Welcome to Bits and Bants, the developer marketing podcast. This week's guest is a good friend of the agency and the co-founder of one of our favorite ad networks, David Fisher. Thanks for being here, David. Appreciate it.
Hey, it's great to be here.
So doing some scene setting, I think, to kind of jump in and get things going here. You're a former software engineer. You were at Qualcomm, Amazon, but you've since gone on to work more on the developer ecosystem than within it. That's kind of how I've phrased it. You're the co-founder at EthicalAds and also on the team at Read the Docs, two organizations that we're big fans of here at Catchy. But some people who are listening may not have heard of them. So tell us a bit more about Read the Docs, EthicalAds, and how the two are connected.
Got you. Yeah. So I started my career at kind of big companies. I was director of technology at like a startup in San Diego where I'm based. And then after that, I kind of was looking, hey, I want to start my own thing, or I want to get involved at like the ground level on something. And I reached out to the Read the Docs folks, and that's where we kind of launched this new business, EthicalAds. So basically, Read the Docs, we had this big website. It did a ton of traffic. People were wearing pagers for what was essentially like a side job. Like it didn't make money. Real problem, but developers used it, and we're like, what are we going to do with this? How are we going to make money? And ads is a big part of how we make money. And so we launched this ad business. I guess I kind of came in and kind of refined it in about 2018, the beginning of 2018. And before that, we'd done not a ton of advertising dollars, kind of like one-off deals for advertisers. And then we kind of professionalized that and built like a real business. And then it became an ad network kind of after that. So that's kind of how it all started. We went to a bunch of like the big ad networks at the time. We said, hey, we have this big site. We want to run ads on it. That's how we're going to monetize. We have some privacy concerns. What can we do about this? And kind of the big boys told us, take it or leave it. So we left it and we built our own thing.
I feel like that's the background story of how many good and important things get built, right? We couldn't find it. It wasn't there. And that's how we got to know each other, because Catchy has worked with EthicalAds since probably around 2022, which comes back to the kind of the challenge statement that reaching developers via traditional digital media it's incredibly difficult, right? Like I can't tell you how many of our current client relationships start with this exact problem statement. They come to us and say, our current agency or vendor or whoever can't figure out how to reach developers. So I think kind of the next logical step here is why are developers so hard to reach with traditional digital advertising?
I think one of the big reasons, it like the gigantic elephant in the room is you got to talk about ad blockers. Developers block ads at a much higher rate than the general public. Like there's probably a couple segments that block at a higher rate than developers, but a lot of developers block ads. I chalk that up to like kind of a couple different reasons. I think developers kind of understand some of the privacy concerns around digital advertising perhaps a little better than some people in the general public. But I think also just, I'm going to be honest with you, like a lot of advertising is really heavy in terms of performance and stuff like that. And developers, like they notice that, and the web runs better without them by and large. We've tried to like strike that middle ground of don't do too much with ads, like don't have auto playing videos, all those kinds of things. Don't try to like really destroy the performance. And likewise, we work on the ad blocker side to try to like, minimize without trying to go around them and say, hey, we're gonna disrupt what they're doing, which is, you can totally do this, but it's kind of a cat and mouse game. We didn't want to do that, but there's a lot you can do to like not be blocked by some ad blockers that focus on blocking maybe tracking instead of ads generally, or maybe they have like an allow list of like the biggest ad blocker, AdBlock Plus. They have an allow list for ads that qualify under some, like basically they're not too bad.
Yeah. So that's actually new for me. I didn't know that. And on top of that, just because the internet is always listening, whether by chance or not, I just got an update for my ad block. As soon as you said it and we were having this conversation, I got a little pop-up that was like, your ad block has been updated. So there you go.
It's called the Acceptable Ads Program. And like there's a whole bunch of rules around it. So we have to make sure that all of our publishers like comply with the rules to be acceptable ads. And to be honest, like this makes a huge difference. Like we
Mhm.
actually measured this. We saw like when we got added to the big ad block lists, like revenue went down, and then like we got added onto the acceptable ads list. How much of that revenue, not all of it, came back? Like we measured this and we saw it firsthand.
Interesting. So I guess that's one example of kind of the next question that I was going to ask, which is, kind of the core of this conversation is how is ethical ads approaching this differently than traditional advertising networks? What is the such a cliche, but like what is the secret sauce for y'all that makes you different?
Yeah, I think it's worth kind of comparing us to like the big ad networks and then maybe the medium size like ad networks.
Mhm.
So if you think of how do we compare with Google, like Google has people, tons of people, millions of people are doing Google searches, and there's search ads, and search is mostly based on the keyword that you type in. Maybe they'll
Mhm.
throw some ads based on some past searches or stuff like this. They'll build a little bit of a profile of you, but largely it's kind of based on like you searched for a thing and then you saw ads related to the thing you searched for. That's
Mhm.
largely the way search ads work. Something like Facebook or something like display ads, Google Display Network, they kind of work totally differently. And largely this is based on past stuff you've done or seen. Hey, you visited this website. Now, even when you're on Facebook, you're going to see ads related to this website that you've looked at in the past. And
Mhm.
Google Display Network works kind of similarly. This is retargeting. A lot of stuff is built on this. Also, they do other stuff, like Facebook or Google. They both kind of build a profile of who you're kind of like, and then it's possible to build what's called a lookalike audience of, hey, I want to
Right.
target my ads to people who kind of look like this. And we kind of said, we don't want to do this. Like we want to basically target ads based on the context of the page, kind of similar
Mhm.
to search ads. So we're doing something much more similar to search ads, but on display ads. And it works pretty well. I mean, I'll be 100% honest. I don't know if you could build something like totally generic, but for developer marketing, we've already excluded everything that's not developers. So
Yeah.
everybody on our network is a developer. You already have like pretty good targeting, and then you can just do, you can refine that targeting a little bit, and it works pretty great. Like, I don't know if you could build something that could target ads to like both toys and lawyers searching for
Mhm.
people searching for like a disease on Google, which is like what all the top keywords are in terms of price. All those, like, I don't know if you could build something that's generic to everything, but if you're just targeting developers and you have, hundreds of subsets of developers, like this works.
And it's such a good context to view this within, especially when we start talking about kind of the difference between search and display networks, right? Because search is one of the building blocks of every media plan that we make. And I feel like the secret is out there, right? Developers are looking for solutions. They're really good at doing research. So paid search is the foundational block of most of the media plans we put out there for especially demand gen and getting people into the funnel. The question from our clients, which it sounds like y'all have done, which we've seen in the results and working with you, is that, so what do we do after search, right? We're not getting the results we wanted from traditional display networks. We're not getting the targeting ability. Search works because we're able to do so much of that very specific keyword targeting around that, but we can't translate that into other platforms. Seems like that's been a big part of what's made Ethical Ads so successful over the last handful of years.
Yeah, pretty much exactly. And we tell our clients the same thing. Like we sometimes get people, a developer creating a startup, and they come to us. They're like, we want to launch with you guys. We believe in your mission. We're going to launch with you guys with our very first ad buy. And largely, I tell them kind of like, you should come back to me in like 6 to 9 months. Like you need to do search first.
Yeah.
Because there's always a low hanging fruit on search ads for whatever your business is. Like every business starts in a small niche, and there is something for that very specific niche, some keywords for your niche if you think about it, and they're cheap, and the ROI is cheap relative to ROI, and they're going to work. They're going to be great. But you are going to max those long before you're going to be like, hey, these are working great. How do I just spend more money on these? And eventually you're going to have to expand your targeting and get something bigger because there's just not enough people searching for the very precise thing that your business solves. And eventually you run up against competing with other people who are bidding lots of money. And at this point, this is where you look at other things, and that includes us.
So I'm curious from here. In one of the things I nerd out about is the idea of the network itself, the power of the network, and where these placements go is such a strong selling point for y'all. So we know kind of write the docs was a big part of this, especially in the beginning. But tell us about the rest of the network. When someone's thinking about placing ads with Ethical Ads or elsewhere, right? Where are these ads being placed, and what makes that again different than your kind of traditional placements?
Got you. Yeah, I mean, so we started with a big publisher to like launch with our ad business, and to be honest, like I don't know how you launch a two-sided marketplace without having kind of one side in the bag. Like I think it would just be impossible, I'll be honest.
Yeah.
But so Read the Docs is still to this day a big part of our network. You know, before 2020 or so, it was 100%. And then since then, it's still probably about 35 to 40% of our network in terms of traffic. So, you know, we're the host. We don't write the content, but we're the host for the content for most of it. And most of the stuff that's on Read the Docs is just like developer documentation. Hey, I want to use a module that, I don't know, integrates Slack into Python or something. Boom, there's a module for that. The documentation, we host it. We show an ad as closely related to that as possible on that documentation.
Context matters.
Context matters, yeah. So that's kind of the bulk of it. And then about 60% or so is like we have like another publisher who's maybe a little bit smaller than Read the Docs. And this is Daily Dev. I think we did a podcast with them like a while back. Years back. And you know, they have like kind of a big ad business, and we're just a part of it. Like they mostly sell their inventory to Carbon, but they sell a fraction to us, and that's great. And then there's kind of like a range of these smaller publishers who all, you know, like they're doing a couple $100 a month maybe in total revenue. You know, like some of these people are just like solo founders who have a project or a documentation for a module that they created themselves. They host it elsewhere, and they're just like, hey, you know, I want to get paid a couple $100 to host this.
Totally.
And so that's kind of where the bulk of our stuff is.
It's been the most important part for us, and this is what we work through with a lot of our clients, is this idea which you touched on again of like context matters. You can use any display network or display platform to get ads out to developers, right? The targeting might not be as good or as nuanced, but you can get ads in front of developers. The most important strategic block that we try and work through with our clients is the importance of hitting developers when they're looking for something very specifically, right? The context of which that ad pops up really makes a difference, because in any other context than that kind of like active evaluation or seeking information related to that specific subject, it's kind of just white noise. And it doesn't really matter. And that's, again, where I think we see such higher engagement rates and CTRs when we get longer into that kind of a long tail of ad networks and display platforms and those sorts of things. Our experience, but that's typically where we try and coach people.
You know, like half of our business is also developers, right? Like we need to attract these websites that are good developer websites to host ads. And so I will tell you, I've done like multiple experiments to try to like, how do I target the keywords like developer ad network or ad network on DuckDuckGo? Because let me tell you, the subset of people who are searching for those things on DuckDuckGo already, that would be like the perfect match for my business. And that's just not a thing I can buy yet, apparently. Or not directly, not without buying a bunch of other stuff I don't want.
Maybe one day, right?
Yeah.
Maybe we'll get there. So I want to jump around, kind of like getting into the lightning round of things. AI, it's come up in every conversation we've had in these podcasts, and for you, I think there's a really specific part of this, right? I've noticed that you've recently updated the platform to include AI-powered contextual targeting. Tell us more about that. What is it, and how is AI kind of changing the game for digital advertising?
Yeah, I think there's a couple parts to that. I think there's how AI is going to change advertising generally, and then there's kind of how is it going to change stuff for us, and it's already changing stuff for us. So like it's definitely going to change advertising, you know, maybe not as much as like some of the doomers believe, but like we talked about it when I was up at CatchyCon, you know, like some of the traffic on some of these Q&A sites like Stack Overflow, it's declining. Google searches by developers, I don't think they publish the statistic. It's got to be falling. Like no question about it. It's got to be falling. And the reason why is because people are replacing it with ChatGPT, or they're replacing it with something that's like built into their IDE, right? Something that's built into how they write software, something that auto completes, or you know, you can ask questions to. Like those things are built into Visual Studio Code, or you know, any of those things. So it's there. So it's going to change how that works. But like do I think that $20 a month ChatGPT subscriptions are just going to replace Google? Like, pretty much no. I don't. Like I think a bunch of these smaller AI tools will probably also monetize with ads. And how does that work? So like, I guess as a business, we simultaneously see like the threat, because
Sure.
in a lot of respects, we're kind of similar to Stack Overflow. We have this big developer audience. People, there's all this content that's kind of segmented by, I hesitate to say keywords because we're doing something like more advanced than that, but like,
Sure.
You can buy keyword traffic essentially against developer segments. But I also, so yes, it's a threat, but it's also kind of an opportunity. And this is kind of where we jumped in, is like, we started experimenting with some of these models, and these models, like a bunch of them are open, or you can get things that are really similar. And some of the technology under the hood, like I'll just throw out a keyword. There's this thing that all these models use that's called an embedding. And it sort of lets you like compare things that are not normally comparable. So you can say like, oh, how close is this image to this other image? Like, are they about the same thing? How closely related is this paragraph of text to this image, right? Like things that you can't normally compare, but like, is this text about this image? Maybe. But an embedding kind of lets you compare those, and also gives you kind of like, how far away are they actually? And so this is going to have a bunch of implications on advertising, on our business, and on kind of technology in general. I think, like, firstly, search everywhere is going to be way better in the future.
Right.
Google is doing this, has been doing this already, but now like anybody can do this. You don't have to be Google to have kind of great search. So that's going to be cool. And then like these models let you compare like how closely related is this ad or like the advertiser's landing page to the page where the ad is going to appear. So like this is all just going to be way, way, way better. So like rather than thinking of, hey, I'm going to buy ads against this specific keyword, you're going to be able to say, I want to buy ads against like this concept and related concepts, and it's just going to work way better. So we've like, I would say we've been dipping our toes in here. It's still a small fraction of our business. I would say like 5% ish or so right now in terms of like monthly ad turnover. And a big part of that is because like we're not able to scale it up. Like if you sell something where I'm selling ads against like two-factor authentication related content, there's just not enough of it.
There is a finite amount of that content available, right?
Right. But you can get it. And like, you don't have, like, even if the words on the page don't say two-factor authentication, it can know, hey, this is about authentication, or this is about two factors, or, they're talking about SMS for two-factor like, it can figure out that all these things are kind of related, and the results are just great. But right now, campaign sizes are small. Is kind of the drawback.
Which again, every time we found that we go into market, every single time it's quality over quantity, especially when trying to reach developers, especially when you have like the value of a developer coming into someone's ecosystem, clicking through, going all the way through the funnel. Like in 99% of cases with our clients and the work that we do, we will always take quality over quantity when it comes to developers and getting them through. I think last question from my end is just something I'm always curious about and don't do a good job keeping up on. So maybe you can kind of educate me here. Is I know that between EthicalAds and Write the Docs, you have a ton of events going on. There's always something going on. So for anyone who's listening, who thinks this is interesting, wants to find out more, what's coming up and what's the best way for people to get involved?
Yeah. So just to clarify, Read the Docs is the company and the hosting, and then Read the Docs created this event called Write the Docs, it's kind of like a conference for tech writers, basically. Is kind of the real answer, like people who write technical documentation or other stuff. And so Read the Docs launched that event, but like now it's run by like an independent committee, although like the Read the Docs team heavily helps out. That's probably the biggest event that's like very specific to us. The Read the Docs team and the EthicalAds team, we do usually attend some of the big development conferences around. So like we had people at PyCon this year, which was just like a week ago. When we're recording this, I think the episode's coming out a bit later. But yeah, so this happened like just a week ago or so. We had people there, and that's kind of like an ecosystem that we care about. So we we go to those types of things, and really, like, I will be 100% honest, like, I didn't know anything about developer advertising before I started doing this. And
Yeah.
so, like, I'm kind of learning on the job. We're like, oh, we should go to some more developer marketing events. So we're like, hey, we'll go to CatchyCon as a result. But yeah, I would say we go to those kinds of events, like a lot of developer events, because that's where you get publishers to hear about you and stuff like that. And we're trying to get more into attending developer marketing related events. However, like when we went to CatchyCon, one of the things that we were really struck by and what we were really like kind of excited about is that one of the things that you guys talked about with marketing is like docs, how docs are marketing, right? You know, it's a big part of your marketing. If you want developers to use your product, the docs have to be there. And so that was just awesome to hear. And, you know, we loved hearing that actually.
No, the environment, it's the total ecosystem that matters, right? For developers. And again, something just like you mentioned that we always try and kind of really drive home with our clients and anyone that we're working with. And it's always, you know, we don't get enough time together. Every time that we see you and the team there, that we get a chat, we always have such good conversation. So I'm glad we got a follow up from CatchyCon with this one. What is the best way, if anyone's interested in learning more information, learning more and following up with y'all, what's the best way for them to get in touch?
Yeah, I mean, like if they're looking to advertise, like go to ethicalads.io and, you know, like let us know if you raise your hand, or you can get in touch with me directly, David@ethicalads.io. You know, like I'm not afraid of getting a direct email, I guess is the right way to put it. My email's out there. So, you know, you could send me an email directly. You can read more about our company. If you're interested in like documentation hosting, you can read the docs, or if you're interested in like learning more about technical writing, Write the Docs is both a great community and like a great event for that kind of a thing. So I would say those are kind of like the main things that Read the Docs and the Ethical Ads team do. Yeah.
Amazing. David, always a pleasure to chat. Really appreciate you taking the time, spending some time here with me chatting about all things media, marketing, ad placements, ad networks, kind of all the above. And looking forward to kind of the next time we get to see each other.
For sure, Gary. Like this was great. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.